I think we're on.
I'm just waiting for it to load. There we go. Welcome to another episode of Missing Persons Uncovered. I'm Caroline Humer, a global online child protection expert.
And I'm Karen Shaleb, Professor for Missing Persons Studies at the University of Portsmouth in the UK.
In this episode series, we seek to understand the complexities of global issues related to missing persons. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people go missing worldwide. In every episode, we talk to professionals to share insights into how we can all be more aware and take actions to protect vulnerable people in our communities and families from going missing. This week, we are happy to be joined by Altin Hazizaj, joining us from Albania, or actually at the moment he's in Ireland. But before I introduce him, before I introduce him, some housekeeping notes or rules. Every 2 weeks we have a new episode with different topics and different professionals from social workers, police, researchers, and academics. If you're interested in missing persons and like the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can also find us under missingpersonsuncovered.com. Feel free to leave a comment or ask questions throughout the live discussions. Please avoid mentioning specific cases or names if you do have specific questions, and let's keep it also professional. We would also love to hear from you if you're tuning in from other places, as well as if you're interested in learning more about the topic and have a thought about ideas on the topic itself. As part of season 4 and being live, we thought we start each episode with quotes from our guests that have special meaning for them. So, Altin, I know we went through this in our prep call, but would love to hear from you what sort of your quote to keep you going in this work.
No, I mean, even before getting to the program, I was thinking like, what could be that quote? I mean, our dedication is for children. So if there is any quote, actually, I could say to be a very short one. I mean, every missing child is a call to action, and is a call also to remind us and everybody actually that every child matters. So that would be my quote, actually.
Brilliant. I think that's a great place to start, isn't it? So first of all, welcome. Really excited to have you on. Um, Before kind of we get stuck into it, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, the work that you do, the organizations kind of that you work in. So yeah, just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It is a pleasure also for me to be in this podcast actually with you and Caroline, of course. I would say very few words. I mean, I have dedicated almost all my life to children and to the child rights actually, and then it probably is one of these choices. Sometimes you make it without thinking, and then only when you come to a certain age, let's say, and then things start making far more sense, and you do understand why. Let's say I do what I do, but I mean, in very short, my name is Altin Hazizaj. I represent CRCA ECPAT Albania, which is the oldest and actually the first child rights and youth rights organization in post-communist Albania. For people who know very little Albania, I mean, for almost 50 years, Albania was under a communist system, under communist regime, very similar to what is North Korea today, actually. So at the end of 90s, I was like 17 to 18 years old. So it was all, let's say, introduction to basic human rights that we take it for granted as normal human beings, but actually in that kind of Albania it was not. So yeah, I mean, 97 together with a group of very well known, I mean, journalists, lawyers, doctors, we started CRC Albania. And almost 30 years later, I mean, when we look back to what we have been doing, I mean, it is really like I mean, I have to say without modesty, you know, like, but we have paved the way to what child rights and youth rights are in Albania of today. And I remember, I mean, it sounds like a joke today, but when we started in '97, I remember it was like a meeting with institutions. And then I represent myself like, Altin Hazizaj here, Child Rights Center. And they're like, child rights? What's that? People even didn't have a basic knowledge. Today, ask any child in Albania, the first thing they'll always say is like, "I have my rights. You cannot, break them or deny them, etc." So it is the whole that kind of change that not only us, of course, as an NGO, there is hundreds of others, but paving that way. I mean, creating this pathway for respect of the rights of the child, I think, is one of the biggest achievements. Otherwise, I mean, CRCA is the main organization behind the establishing the National Center for Missing Children. And I mean, I have to thank Caroline because being in contact with at global level, being part of global networks and meeting people with various and different experiences, it helps also us to bring this kind of experience in our countries that were crawling probably in their beginning about learning and understanding what human rights are about and what children's rights are about. And then, of course, growing up, and I'm very happy today. I mean, I can say, I mean, to be considered an expert, it feels rather very good, because I'm sure, I mean, globally, there are so many good people out there we can talk about that can talk about this issue. But yeah, I mean, CRCA, it's one of the organizations. We established the National Missing Children Helpline in late 2008, 2009, National Child Helpline, and later on we established also the Safer Internet Center, of course, dealing with exploitation of children online, CSAM, etc. So, as I said, I mean, we're proud to say that we have paved the way for children to matter, children to enjoy their rights, but also for the society to be responsible and to respect the rights of the child.
So let's I always like to start with kind of defining key terms, right? So we kind of always hear about human rights. It's everywhere, but what does it actually mean?
Human rights, I mean, it depends how I mean, if you want to have this kind of philosophical view or not, but is a right that every person enjoys at the moment we are born, and some of them even before we are born, let's say. But let's say I keep the kind of positivist view of, you have to be born in order to start enjoying your rights. But it is basically those. I mean, in terms of simple explanation, it is those rights that the government, above all, I mean, because there's a difference between child rights and human rights, but when it comes to human rights, it's about the obligation of the national institutions, of public institutions, of the state as we consider otherwise, to respect you as individual and not to let's say violate those rights which are considered the most important, not only for your simply for your right to life, like we enjoy that as we come in life, but about many other rights that we come or that we gain along. I mean, because there is this, of course, discussion about whether the rights are given, are we born, or they are assigned to us by legislation. So whatever is the source of our rights is those that make us strong, independent individuals that give us a right to uh, be able to enjoy, let's say, the society we live in, but without forgetting that, and I think this is very important, every right comes with responsibility. And this is very important. And there is a very beautiful expression. It says that my rights are up to let's say, to that point that it doesn't violate someone else's rights, which means that although they are individual, there is also this common place where our rights meet, and that's where respect, above all, it is rather very, very important. But yeah, I mean, in short term, this would be, I mean, what are human rights without making, as I said, too much philosophy about it.
I mean, we also have the UN Convention,
Of course, yeah.
the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the UN Convention on child rights as well. So those provide good universal definitions in general terms. But I also wonder then, with that in mind, how you sort of see the connection between what we're talking about missing and the human rights or child rights, as you're focusing on children mainly, and how it's sort of interconnected between the two.
Yeah. Just continue what you're saying about human rights, and then we can talk about the missing part. At least as you said, I mean, there is major, so important human rights international documents, and if there is anything that would kind of bring together the whole concept of human rights about living a life in dignity. I mean, for me, this is the most important thing: living a life that no one, without violating, of course, anyone's rights, but without fear of repression, oppression, and then or being, treated differently from someone else. And in that respect, I mean, when we look into the, let's say, how human rights, child rights, women's rights, because there's all these bodies of rights connect with missing. Uh, I think if there is any basic human right that connects so much with missing is the right to life. And when a child goes missing, when a person goes missing, the biggest question it is always, is this person alive or not? And that's where the basic fact starts. Like uh, for families, it is so important, and of course, it comes with an obligation for the government, for the institution, but for the family, first of all, it is important to know that their child or their missing person, it is there, it is still alive. And that's the hope that I think it keeps all of us working to the issue of missing persons. The fact that we always hope, we always have a kind of big, let's say, search for life, and looking for a missing person is about searching for the life of a person. But also, when time passes, and this is a process that, I mean, initially, when you start this kind of job, it is very hard. But I mean, then as a professionals, of course, we find ways to cope with these things and learn from every experience. What we understand also along the way it is that for parents, for people who care of the person who is missing, sometimes the closure is also very important. And in that process, uh, I mean, it feels sad. I mean, I often find it kind of ironic, but it is part of the process. Sometimes it's like, I guess in every culture probably is similar, but even if it is that, I just want to find the person, So there's a kind of closure that people want to have. They know that at least there is a grave of a person, there is a memory, there is a place where you can have your beloved person, and then of course, it seems like there is a closure of that kind of the story. As I said, it sounds ironic, it's sad, but it's part of the human life. Like, you don't, it builds into the story of missing persons. Like any closure, it's in itself somehow, let's say, a part of the solution. Always our hope it is that we find people alive, we find people well, and there is so many positive stories out there. So yeah, I mean, this could be one, but beyond that, I mean, when it comes to children, there is so many other rights that we look into. It's, as I said, I mean, apart from right to life, is one of the basic concepts and principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is the, I mean, is the child basically I'm trying to translate now into, into English and trying to make sense of it, but the right to survival and development. And any child that actually goes into, let's say, missing, it means, apart from existence, the whole development of the child is put in a big question mark. Uh, so yeah, I mean, there is several, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking that also that's probably the reason why you and Albania is looking at missing children as a human rights violation, not necessarily as a not only as a police issue, but a human rights violation, which in a lot of countries it's not really looked upon as that, right? It's looked upon as a police issue only, or maybe as a social issue, but not as a human rights issue.
If there is anything actually that out of experience, and we both of us, we have, I mean, all of us have this kind of experience. It is, at least in my opinion, it is a very strong human rights issue for the fact that the not only police, but I mean the whole public institutions, uh, as human beings, we trust our security and our safety to the government, and it is part of our social contract. So, in that regard, it is, even if I go missing by myself, let's say, uh, there is still public institutions who should be looking, and this is not only a police matter, actually. In my opinion, it is a matter of every single institution who deals with, whether it is a child or an adult, I mean, who deals with welfare of people, who deals with life, who deals with security, who deals with safety. And when you think that there is usually only police who deals with this issue, we do understand how limited the scope and the view that institutions have when it comes to missing persons. And I do understand that yes, it is a police work because they have the tools and means and the kind of mandate. In most of the countries, is the police who we go to report a missing case. We don't go to social institutions because they don't have any tools to find missing person. But when you look at the police, how uh, ill-equipped they are uh, when it comes to finding missing persons, and then we compare, let's say, what they have available to other parts of police that deal with security on other areas, and how much investment there is, for example, into phone tapping and email reading and all these other areas. You are always like, could we maybe spare some of the funding that goes into, let's say, uh, playing or doing the Big Brother compared to finding these people who are missing? That one has to realize that they're still there. They're in our country or the next neighbor country, depends how open the borders are. And if there was more cooperation and better work among all institutions, like we do as NGOs, I mean, why do NGOs cooperate so good with each other, border to border, But even globally, compared to the police that find so many barriers to work with each other when it comes to missing persons. So I think there is so many questions that we should start raising when it comes to missing persons, including the fact actually that even let's say at the global level, like even at UN, etc., the views and I think the work also needs to change to look into these issues in more human rights perspective rather than simply, as I said, like safety and security.
So, in the UK particularly, there's a lot of discussion about adults. And I think it's in other countries as well, adults that go missing. Then, in a sense, they have the right to decide as long as they're not forced to leave. There's an adult, if you're of conscious mind and free will, you have the right to leave. And we see it in different countries where police forces are almost stopped from investigating or don't bother because they say, well, they chose to. So unless I have reason to believe that they were forced to. So unless I see evidence of a crime, we don't investigate. Whereas in the UK, there's a slightly different approach in that our view of understanding the human rights is also vulnerability.
Yeah.
And if people go missing as adults, and for example, if there's mental health or dementia, or the big reasons why adults go missing, that actually it is about their human rights to be protected, safeguarded, exactly those things you mentioned, that leads us to then pursue the investigation. Then it's not just when a crime occurs. So I was just wondering about your view on it in relation to human rights and adults that go missing.
You know, we come a little bit from different cultures, perspectives. I mean, I come from Albania, you're from UK, and we are not that far. I mean, but still there is differences. Um, I think because the Western world has been for longer time than Albania. I mean, let's say to see this kind of loss of importance of family links, because people live in different ways nowadays, and they travel and they can set up their families and their lives across different countries, not only a single country. Um, but in Albania, what I see compared to UK, for example, is that the family links remain still very, very close. Uh, we like few days, 2 to 3 days ago, actually, on the occasion of the International Missing Children Day, which is on 25th of May. On 23rd, we organized this small kind of manifestation in front of Prime Minister's office and in front of the Albanian Parliament, because they're in front of each other actually. And the journalists, I mean, they did us a beautiful question, and I consider lucky, at least a certain part of it. I mean, most, if not all, but let's say almost all the children that go missing in Albania during 1 year time, most of them are found. Like rarely we have the negative stories that you listen in US mostly, but not only where the child has been murdered or, of course, abducted, and then probably being exploited, etc. Like we're looking to the last data, apart from 2 years ago when we had the very misunfortunate case of a child being murdered after it was sexually abused. But most of the children, all children, are found. And the journalist was asking, like, how's possible, that the missing children are not missing. And I says we should look into the positive, not the negative. Like, really, thank you, they are there and they're back to families. Hopefully, nothing happened to the child. There are, of course, lots of stories that we know, especially with girls that usually are sexually abused or exploited, and then families raise alarm, and then the child is found, but they're still back in family, which means we can provide. All of us can provide services to rehabilitate, to help them to build their life. But it is a very curious case, and one of the factors that we looked into actually it is the family links and the community links. When a child goes missing, it is so important for the local communities to be together. So it's not like not to know who your neighbor is, which is a very standard Western kind of behavior. Like I don't care. I say hi and bye, and that's it. Out of courtesy. You need to know, and that's a kind of community life we need to build. We need to know who our neighbors are. We need to build a community with them, and because it is also to do with our safety as community. No community is safe if there is a child missing and it is abducted, or it goes and cannot be found, or it is run away. If it is a runaway, why it is running away, and social services need to know about that. So this is the kind of let's say, information, but also cultural difference that I find it very, very, very important. That I believe somehow in large Western societies has been lost. And I have no idea really. I mean, need to think about it, but how we can bring it back. This kind of, taking care of each other, like communities, like people. We live together, we share our environment, our space, and our stories. You live in the same place, so uh, that would be probably something could help. And if we look, I mean, into the global data of missing children, whether it is Europe, but especially USA, you can understand that. I mean, the fact that the number of children, missing children, are going up and up and up, and the issue has become really so problematic. It is because of family links and community links, and lack of it, of course.
So in
I think
terms
it's
of adults,
Listen, for us, for adults, and again, is a difference. I mean, um, we have very few adults missing in Albania. Not that it doesn't happen. We have these unfortunate stories, especially for adults, which are probably, I mean, with dementia, and usually that's a story. They go missing, and then, of course, they're found, unfortunately, I mean, have had an accident, and then later they're found not alive, which is very, very sad. We have stories like that, but as I says, they're a minority compared to the numbers that we fight back. And I says, this is the kind of when it comes to the police, actually, I mean, they're obliged uh, to, especially if there is a risk, like vulnerability, like dementia, for example. Uh, what the police does in Albania, which I don't like it and I don't agree with it, is that they have a 24-hour rule for a missing person if there is no vulnerabilities. So, and that applies also for children, which I don't agree myself. And we know by experience that the first 24 hours are very important to find a child. So, unless there is when it comes to vulnerabilities and to these risk factors, if there is a heightened risk factor, the police would not wait, but rather immediately would publish the picture, the data, the name of the person with the family permission, of course, into all the national media. So it becomes rather an issue. What is also different, I'm not saying the whole world, I mean, is a friendly place, but as I said, our communities continue to be rather very supportive. And if a person is let's say, has gone missing, and people on the street will see that there is someone who probably doesn't even know where he or she is, they would not let the person just continue his own business. Rather than they'll sit down or provide with a coffee or a drink, and then look into that kind of story to understand if the
mm,
person needs assistance, and then they would call the police, etc. So it is this kind of, as I said, community links, family links that keep people. And in a small town, it would be impossible for a person to go missing unless, as I said, something bad has happened. In larger towns like Tirana, for example, that it is a story that it goes on, but people are usually adults are found within a given time.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of similar even with the US, that in smaller towns, people will help each other,
Yeah,
and they know each other and they know who's who or where they belong to, or where they live. Whereas the big cities is much, much harder. I do see the difference in numbers, absolutely, but also I think, I mean, Albania is small compared to the
yeah,
US
yeah.
or compared to the UK, so the numbers is not really comparable as such. But I do think there is also the element that yes, you do have a bigger, I think, community of families and neighbors that look after each other, that sort of focus around, that know that the neighbors, and you do street, street festivals
Yeah.
and other things that bring the community together, which again in the big cities you don't really do because you don't have the capacity or the time or inkling and time and money as well. So that makes it even harder. I do wonder,
But
maybe
then
that's
again, then again, we come to the human rights issue. Why there is no money for these things? It's a basic human rights question, like How
It
do we
should be,
promote
yeah. I
how
mean,
do we
in the
promote
end,
safety and security and cooperation, of course? It's about basic, again, I mean, about basic human rights.
yeah.
How we live together, how we coexist together, that we respect, we do not have crimes, we protect each other. So uh, I don't want to hide the governments, behind this kind of justification, like there is money. I mean, is more about planning and whether you put, again, you have the kind of human rights perspective, like you think, what can I do to make our community safe? Or it is about, oh, we invest to make the business better. So, it's about priorities, but not because there is lack of funding. Even poor countries, they have money. I'm not saying they have much
Find a
money, but they
way.
do.
You find a way no matter
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to do it. And I think that's the important part. And I wonder though, as Albania had a lot of influx, I guess what, 5 years ago now, with the migrants coming in across Europe, but you were also one of the countries that were impacted quite hugely as they were coming through you as transit. I wonder how that impacted things, if at all, from a human rights and from a missing perspective, because those were families that were moving or transient and didn't necessarily have the community that you're talking about,
Yeah.
and vulnerable to going missing.
It still goes on, not the same kind of large, let's say, migration. And I mean, personally, I even ask myself, like, why UK, for example? I mean, is they're looking to go to UK when there is richer countries in Europe that you can go without even visa. But whatever, UK was a promised land for a certain type of migrant, probably coming from Albania. But yeah, I mean, I think there is something positive. There are negative aspects, but there is some positive aspects. I mean, I was happy that after quite a lot of mingling among countries, uh, the governments, they found a way to talk to each other. And I think that's very, very important. Um, and secondly, because most of this kind of migration, it is irregular and is dangerous. It's not that people get a plane and they go from A to B. They're getting these plastic dinghies.
Mm.
And they are not even, like one or two people, you are going, like in Venice, but they are like full of people and they're fast. And we know, I mean, the channel between France and or Netherlands and UK is not safe. I mean, so I mean, it is a madness how people actually for a better life, and that's the critical view we have for at least my country. How people will put their life in danger, hoping that once they get to UK or another country, they'll get a better life, which is not the case. And we know that lots of these young, especially because most of them were boys, uh, first of all, many of them have gone missing. And in UK, every year there is a report actually about missing children, including Albanian children and minors who have gone missing from, let's say, the so-called safety of the camps or the places where they are kept, um, which again translates into a big question mark about their existence. And I remember we had an argument because we were concerned about the lack of work from our authorities to provide safety, security, but also give the kind of hope that this country is moving on, is not anymore simply a post-communist poor country. It's rather quite middle income to a high middle income country, actually. So there is hope if you find a good, decent job. I mean, there is always this kind of information that young people need to have. So we're kind of being aggressive in our campaigns and our, let's say, discussions with our government. And they have a little bit like the currencies about UK about missing persons, down missing persons. Why the freedom of, is a basic human right, the freedom of movement. You know, like you are free to move, doesn't matter how you move. Whether it is safe or not, that's your own business as long as you are an adult, you know. I mean, they got this kind of simplistic view of, let's say, migration, that everyone who moves to UK or anywhere else is their business, they're free to move, let them move, and they'll be fine, which is actually quite wrong. And what we know in UK is that many of these young men, they end up into the let's say, illicit kind of economy, you know, I mean, whether it is drugs or prostitution or, you know, many other illicit, let's say, economies. So that's in itself, it translates or it becomes again a human rights issue. If you end up in prostitution, which means that someone is exploiting you, it is one of the, let's say, basic rights, whether you are a child, a young person, or an adult. But everybody should live and should have a decent job, a decent living, and should live in dignity. You know, so I think. As I said, I mean, both countries finally are talking. Um, if I have a critical view, the way how UK approached the issue, it was so wrong because, first of all, it is not only men who are coming, at least from Albania anyway. Second, you don't look into, let's say, the issue from the perspective of politics. And I remember the Home Office minister saying that basically they are being invaded, which is like, you know, UK is like 54 million people. And I think in total, the Albanians asking, I mean, coming irregularly around 50,000. And the UK army probably is the second or third in the world. So you are like, my God, are you so weak that you are being invaded from Albanians, you know? And they are not even armed. So, I mean, so it is this kind of rhetoric that doesn't help. And it was sad. I mean, it felt like very, very kind of sad look into an issue of people who are trying to move for a better life. You know, they're not coming in there to work into an illicit, to do this kind of illegal or illicit kind of work. They're coming in there to build a life because they think UK is a better country than Albania or some other countries. So this kind of lack of perspective, looking to the issue, I thought, and politicization of it was rather quite negative. But uh, looking to migration, I believe the whole world. I mean, look at US right now, for example, and even in Albania, we have a large number of migrants crossing mostly to Albania, hoping to get into EU. So I don't think there is any country who is prone or is protected from irregular migration. And I personally believe that, I mean, countries should find ways, first of all, I mean, of course, it's to do with safety and security of these people. Whether they want to stay in your country or not, that's a big question, but also that should be part of the understanding. Uh, Even if they stay for a few months, can they leave and stay safely? Can they find a job? Maybe they want to stay in the country. And there is so much opportunities for migrants to be integrated across any country of Europe. Even if you look to Albania, we need so many workers that we don't have because, of course, ours migrated anyway. So the whole world basically is moving.
Yeah.
So we need to give to people opportunity to integrate as much as they can and be safe. I mean, uh,
Yeah, but
what, yeah,
it's also then a human rights element to it, right? It's providing them with the human rights to be able to say you're allowed to move, you're allowed to go from one place to another, or you're allowed to stay here. But it's then still looking at the missing element of saying, okay, we need to know where you are going
yeah,
because you are not part of this society, i.e. this country. Therefore, we need to know where your endpoint is or where you're heading so that we can know what will happen, right? And keep you safe.
Yeah, but
So,
in terms of politics, this becomes extremely problematic. Like, I mean, for us coming from the NGO, looking into the simple, real fact, it's fine, and I don't see politics on it. But if you say to a government official, I'm putting myself into the shoes of a migrant, for example, in Albania, and you say, oh, my end, let's say, point should be Germany. The countries do not work thinking in kind of simplistic view to help the person, or at least to create this kind of safe premise for the person to move along. We're talking about Europe right now, to move along Europe. And it is this kind of, uh, dramatization, politicization of everything about migration that almost criminalizes a person without doing a crime.
do you then think that that has caused for more migrants to go missing?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I
And
mean, we look into the issue of children, for example. I mean, um, it's the same across Europe. For example, they come from a conflict area and usually go to Turkey, then from Turkey to Greece, and then if they come to Albania, basically they always will come through Greece, which is an EU country. In principle, it shouldn't happen, but it happens. Albania and Greece do not have an agreement between the two countries to safely return these children back to Greece.
mm,
So those children actually they are recorded, registered in Albania, and of course they are supposed to get so many services, which they don't. Which means, of course, that their basic child rights are not even respected, are not even met. Let's say there are legal requirements beyond even international documents. Even in the Albanian legislation, there is rules because, of course, you have to meet the international standards set about migrants. Whether you want to ask for asylum, there is a procedure. If you are, let's say, irregularly happen to a country, there is another procedure.
right.
No one is respecting them. Why? Oh, we know these children are not going to stay in Albania because they are foreign children. They want to get to a EU country. Let them do whatever they want. So we had this report 2 years ago about child foreign migrant, let's say irregular migrant children in Albania, unaccompanied, of course. And you can see that at government level, even they know that these are unaccompanied, they don't have an adult, they have an imaginary adult which actually exists, which is only talking to them on telephone, and it is that one who is the smuggler or the trafficker, and we don't know if these children are being simply smuggled or trafficked. And everyone has this kind of, they suppose like the child is safe because I want to get to Germany, so let them go. And you're like, and what happens during this child? I mean, during the moving of this child? How can it be safe when we know that there are people who commit crimes against children, who are pedophiles, who want actually to exploit children for any reasons that whether it is for sex, whether it is for prostitution, whether it is for any kind of illegal labor or irregular or any kind of exploitation, basically. So none of these are considered. And uh, we made a big fuss about this in Albania, and the authorities were like, "Yeah, we're reforming the system now. It's always about reform, and nothing happens at the end of the reform anyway." And then I was to Macedonia, and it was the same problem. And I moved to Montenegro. Montenegro was like, "We don't have any foreign children," and I'm like, "All our children are passing through you.
Yeah.
They are not our children because they are not Albanian, but let's say they are passing from Albania to Montenegro. We don't have any records of it. It was zero records of children entering into Montenegro. We ask in Kosovo, and they are like, Albania and Kosovo do not have a border, so they can cross anytime they want. So basically, any country is not even understanding the magnitude of the problem and what actually could happen to these children. But even the fact that they know that there is a smuggler, I'm taking the easiest, that there is someone smuggling them, so nothing bad is happening to the child. How on earth can you let a child walking and walking and walking or taking buses with so many strangers around and not think that they are in danger? I mean, is this kind of simplistic view that really, I mean, I think intentionally they want to make everything look safe when it is not safe.
Yeah, I mean that's a political view, and that's why
Yeah.
it's different. It's a difficult conversation between the politicians and the NGOs and civil society. Sorry, Karen, you wanted to ask something?
No, I was gonna ask kind of about, I always think we try to be a bit positive as well
Yeah,
as kind of identifying the issues, and what are the, just for people listening, what can they do? What are the steps that people can take and organizations can take to improve the situation? Something concrete that, other than us saying this is horrendous and not acceptable in any way, what can be done?
yeah.
What are the things that you would recommend, for example, just in terms of thinking of human rights and legal standpoint, or just the culture shift from organizations that work in the field?
You know,
What would you
for
recommend?
most of the organizations, um, first of all, they need to look into the issue of missing, whether it is missing person, missing children, it doesn't matter because there is so, even if we do our campaigns, and then there are big campaigns, there are no small campaigns about missing children. And of course, we publish posters, etc., like when the child goes missing. You see that there is so much little awareness among civil society, but also public institutions when it comes to missing children and missing persons. Uh, Usually, for example, when we organize our marches, protests, or even like a small gathering in front of a ministry or a public institution, we are far more than simply people from two or three organizations. Usually it'll be 20 or 30, coming together about rights of the child. And when it is about missing children, believe me, it is only us and very close partner organizations, but nothing else, no one else. And there is always this kind of question mark. Even this year, we had the same question mark from friends and colleagues. It's like, my God, you're so few people in front of the prime ministers. Like this is a major issue. You should be in hundreds. And I'm like, we're trying to make sense, but it's so difficult to make sense about missing persons or missing children to so many people. So rising awareness, training, and getting information about it, I would say, is the most probably pressing and urgent issue. Second, uh, whether we like our governments or not, whether we like our ministers or politicians, we need to work with them. Because in democracy, we entrust them with a lot of power. And that power, is not only power to exercise, but also to be held accountable. And I think this is where the civil society, but also any individual, should ask the questions about missing children, about missing persons. Uh, Whether it is a letter, whether it is a petition, whether it is a motion put in parliament, and there is so many tools we have as even as individuals to ask for accountability. I think it does help quite a lot. And we took the case, like you mentioned, Karen, the case of UK for adult personnel for missing children. Imagine what kind of impact would have if even 100 people wrote to the prime minister or to the home office minister asking them why the police has only this kind of narrow view about, let's say, missing persons, including the freedom to get lost, basically, because that's how I interpret what you said. Uh, I don't have the freedom to. I mean, there's nowhere written that there is anyone yes, I have the freedom of movement, but not the freedom to get lost unless no one will mention me ever, like I never existed. And that I think could bring this kind of discussion. And I also think, for example, even in Albania, as I have critical view, but still every year we go in front of the parliament or the prime minister's office. I don't want to protest because it's not about protesting. It's about the memory, it's about the fact, it's about advocacy, of course, but to remember these people who are not among us, whether they are adults, whether they are children, it doesn't matter. We want them to be remembered. Our hope still is to bring them home. So even organizing this kind of, even 5 people, it doesn't matter, even one. I remember the first time I got in US, in Washington D.C. Everyone of course is very curious about going to the White House, and then I was like, there was one single person, it had put like this kind of banner in both sides of the body, hanging in there. Carlin, you know what I mean, basically. And I was like, what the hell is this person doing alone in there? And you get curious, and I talk to the person, and he's like, this is my right, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh, yes, exactly. And it empowers, even if you are a human rights defender, you feel sometimes being alone is not a nice thing, but it is about human rights, even being alone. Actually, it helps. Why? It's about rising that voice that probably someone else is not doing. So yeah, I mean, I think we all need to exercise and believe in our power. I think this is very important too.
I also think that we should be looking at and educating people more about what their human rights are and their child rights. Because yes, you mentioned that in Albania, majority of the children know what their rights are. If you're asking any child in the US, they barely know it, right? I don't know about the UK, but certainly I think in other European countries it will be the same. So I think there's a need for education. There's a need to build awareness on what the human rights elements are. Just because even though they've been around for a long time, we've sort of taken it for granted, maybe in the
Yeah,
democracy,
that's true.
and sort of forgot what they are. But I think that's sort of where I think another element that we need to look at. But I know we're also coming to the end. So any last thoughts, Altin? Because I know this is a great conversation to have, and it could be way more than an hour long. But wanted to give you the last word before I close up.
No, if there is any last word, I mean, I think all of us say we should kind of have the kind of last word. But if there is any kind of reflection that I could make in the end of this, it is that uh, is more a critical view. I mean, I'll try to keep it positive, but we need to work more together, as countries and as NGOs. And I don't see that happening so much. Yes, we're part of different networks in Europe, but it's still, when you look into the countries, police to police, they lack this kind of ability to break I don't want to say procedures because they're very important, but kind of borders in order to make the case of children and find them. That's but also professionally. If you're police and you don't talk to the child protection officers or to teachers, etc., like sometimes I have this kind of feeling like we all have, coming from Albania, that build a bunker in there. We're safe inside, but the rest, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah.
As professionals, we need to break all of this and come together for the rights of child, for the rights of any person. Actually, like we need to make our societies safe, secure, and enjoyable. We live together, so we need to enjoy the time we have in this earth to have it in a good terms with everyone.
That is a perfect way to end. So really well done, well said, Altin. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to find out more about our work and any resources we've mentioned in the show, past or present, you can go to missingpersonsuncovered.com and look at the list of episodes from this season 4, as well as from the past seasons. And if you have any questions you would like us to answer, or have thoughts on topics, or you would like to be a presenter and person speaking with us, please reach out to us. We would be happy to talk to you. Please contact us through our website. And if you'd like specific information or need help, please reach out to your local police department or your national charity or NGO in the country that you live in. So again, thank you, Altin, for joining us. I'm sure we'll be having more conversations on this, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
There we go.